Senior reporter Daniel Dale is joining us now for a fact check. That's what he does. Daniel, let's start with Republicans right now. Here's some of what President Trump has said in recent days. Listen.
No cuts to Medicaid. We're not touching anything. All I want is one thing. 3 words. We don't want any waste, fraud, or abuse. Very simple. Waste, fraud, abuse. Other than that, we're leaving it.
Can you guarantee that your voters who supported you in the election, particularly working class voters, will not lose health insurance under this bill?
Oh, they won't lose health insurance.
So what's the reality here?
The reality, Wolf, is that this bill does cut Medicaid and would result in some Americans, undoubtedly including some Trump supporters, losing health insurance. Now, precisely how many, we don't know. We should be cautious. We're dealing with estimates here. But we do have an estimate from the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office that this bill would result in 7.6 million additional uninsured people in 2034. And I should note, that estimate came out before Republicans made a last-minute change to accelerate the introduction of work requirements for Medicaid that could result in additional uninsured people. So how big are the cuts we're talking about? Well, about $700 billion in Medicaid savings to the government, CBO estimates. Now, President Trump says waste, fraud, abuse, vague terms, but if the impression he's trying to create is that you can get to $700 billion by, cutting out some phony billing or something, you just can't. Expert after expert has told our excellent policy reporter Tammy Luby that these savings would primarily be achieved by having fewer people enrolled in the program. Now, why would so many fewer people be enrolled? Well, this bill would introduce those work requirements, requiring people to have a job or be volunteering, be enrolled in job training or be in school. It would cut funding to certain states. It would impose additional administrative paperwork burdens, requiring people to prove their eligibility more frequently. It would require some enrollees to pay for part of their coverage for the first time. So, of course, I'm not taking a position on this. You could argue these are good or bad, necessary or not necessarily, but yes, these are cuts. Yes, some people would lose their insurance.
Front now, David Urbit, former Trump campaign advisor, and Lulu Garcia-Navarro, New York Times podcast host. So, David, full disclosure, you are on the Coinbase Global Advisory Board. I know you're pro-crypto. Let's look, though, at beyond the crypto, right? Should the president be embracing people like Justin Sun? As Jeff just reported, he was afraid to come to the country. Fast forward to today, he's getting a private tour of the White House. This is a Chinese billionaire who has invested tens of millions into Trump coins and until recently, again, was facing civil fraud charges.
Yeah, Erica, I don't like it, right? I don't like it at all. I don't like when members of Congress benefit off their trades. I don't think, political figures, whether you're president of the United States or a House member or a Senate staffer, should be, benefiting off the markets. And so I don't like it at all. I think it's a major distraction from real legislation that's being taken up in the Senate and moving forward. So no, I think it's a distraction, and it was something the president probably shouldn't have done.
We also heard, from this reporting from the Times that a number of the attendees told the Times they attended, and I'm quoting here, with the explicit intent of influencing Mr. Trump and U.S. financial regulations. You look at that, having been an advisor, who does President Trump listen to in a moment like this? Is there anyone around him who could say, hey, this is a really bad look?
Yeah, I'm not so quite sure, Erica. I noted some of the members on the Senate and the House who are working towards real reform on crypto legislation, the Genius Act and other things. They noted it was a distraction as well. So I'm not quite sure who he listened to on this one. If he was listening to me, I would have said stay away, because it's really damaged some real work that was being done in the industry and for the industry.
This private secret dinner in which individuals who have put money in Donald Trump's pocket get access to him is maybe the most corrupt of all of the corruption.
Donald Trump's dinner is an orgy of corruption.
Democratic lawmakers using some colorful language to describe President Trump's private black tie dinner last night for the top investors in his cryptocurrency meme coin. One of those investors, a Chinese-born crypto entrepreneur, posted this video giving us an inside look at the exclusive event. CNN has learned that the 220 wealthy guests dined on filet mignon and halibut, and that the president gave a 20-minute speech. Here's a bit of that.
I know we paved the way for the strategic reserve to acquire even more Bitcoin in the years ahead. We have a strategic reserve. I also created the United States Digital Asset Stockpile so the government can leverage the power of crypto assets for the first time ever. You know that. Genius. And it's really becoming powerful.
The White House says the president attended the event in his personal capacity. But critics, like our next guest, says the dinner presented foreigners with the opportunity to purchase access to the president. With us now is Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Senator, thanks so much for being with us. I want to play for you some sound from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, specifically talking about Trump's presence at this dinner. Let's listen.
The president is attending it in his personal time. It is not a White House dinner. It's not taking place here at the White House.
Senator, should the U.S. president be allowed to partake in a function like this during personal time?
You know, the function reflects the scam. And the scam is that this access to the president, because he was president, not because he's Donald Trump, the private citizen, is the result of his office. And in effect, he's putting a for sale sign on the White House. He is, in effect, saying to the investors in his crypto meme coin that they can gain access to him and he will know who they are if they have, for example, investigations underway, as the top investor has, Justin Sun. He has a case before the SEC. And remember that the meme coin has no value in its tied to any specific asset. Its function is simply a speculative item, and it is the result of speculation in being tied to the president and the access that has been sold here. So it is really the height of scams, unprecedented and unconscionable, selling the office in effect, and the functions just reflects that kind of scam. It is truly putting this president on a Mount Rushmore of corruption.
We should note that case that you mentioned was put on hold in February. I'm curious about the substance of what some of the attendees shared with reporters. They argue that this venture is part of an effort to modernize the economy and to embrace financial innovation in a way that the previous administration didn't. I wonder how you respond to that and whether you have any evidence that the attendees actually had private time with the president to lobby for any kind of change with regulation in regard to cryptocurrency.
You know, let's be realistic. They may not have had time last night to lobby with him, but he can look around the room and there's a record of who attended. He knows full well how much they've invested. And by the way, there was a leaderboard, a competition, and a contest for who was going to invest the most. And the one who invested the most was actually Justin Sun. You spoke earlier about his SEC case. It was paused and negotiations begun to settle it shortly after he began investing in this meme coin. So the president doesn't have to talk to anybody in that room for him to know who is putting money in his pocket. And let's be very clear, the sole function of this meme coin is to put money into his pocket, funnel cash to his family. It is the most blatant, outright misuse of office in the nation's history.
Senator, I also want to ask you about the situation with Harvard, this legal fight, and a judge temporarily blocking the administration's efforts to ban international students enrolling in the university. The administration says that this is an effort to root out pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic activity on campus. It does come at a time when we were seeing Jewish people get murdered on the street for their beliefs in this country. I wonder what you make of the administration's efforts to address anti-Semitism.
Harvard is making an effort to address anti-Semitism. It has taken steps to stop the harassment of students on campus and to end any kind of terrorist activity that could in any way be interpreted as supported by Harvard. But, you know, the irony here is that the administration is saying Harvard is coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party, and yet at that dinner last night, a number of the meme coin buyers were actually from China. You can bet they have a connection to the Chinese government. And the problem with that meme coin dinner is that it makes him beholden to foreign interests in a way that the Emoluments Clause sought to prevent. That's why I went to the floor of the Senate and asked that we have a vote on all of these payments, the plane, the meme coin, and others, and that we have a list of who was at that dinner. It's undisclosed. We know nothing about who was there. And Harvard is standing up to this administration in its slide toward a surveillance state. The demands it is making are purely retaliatory, and they're a violation of the First Amendment, which is why a court today put a temporary restraining order on the administration's demands from Harvard and its ending of the visa program that enables students, international students, to attend Harvard. It's a blatant violation of law, unconscionable and unprecedented, an intrusion on academic freedom, because what the administration wants to do is tell Harvard what to teach, who should teach, and who should be students there. And that is a violation of academic freedom, but the First Amendment, because it's based on viewpoints, not on terrorist activity or coordination with the Chinese Communist Party.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, we have to leave the conversation there. Very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Our panel is back with us now, and we want to talk more about Trump's meme coin dinner last night. Tolu, initially when this invitation went out, there was an indication that some of the top spenders on this meme coin were going to get a private tour of the White House. That was since scrapped after it was reported on. We don't know exactly where this private tour is going to take place yet, do we?
We don't know, but we do know that a lot of the top spenders are people from foreign countries, and this is a new way for them to donate to our political system, to donate to the person in power in the White House.
This exposes Trump and how he's out of touch and how he doesn't give a damn about regular people. He doesn't. This is the level of brazenness that even for him is a bit much. And you could tell because often when you have like the Trump surrogates, the Trump spokespeople, the Trump cronies, stooges, whatever you want to call them, let's just be nice and call them surrogates. You know, they often defend the indefensible with Trump, right? There's almost never a rock bottom. But every once in a while, and they won't be strongly critical of him, really. But what you saw there is you do hear things like, oh, well, I don't know if the president should have done that. Or you know, maybe this isn't his best moment. Or, you know, he's like, I usually agree with him, but this time I'm not sure. It's still relatively soft criticism. Let's make that clear. But in the world of Trump, like relative to how his operation normally operates, that is effectively them, like, smacking him in the jaw. Like, that's how bad that is. In a regular system with regular honest surrogates and aides and people in the media, they would be much more willing and able to criticize Trump. But Trump has created an environment where that's not possible. And this is how bad it is. These videos leaked from the event and whatnot, the spokespeople reacting. Trump has had his let them eat cake moment this time, and it is ugly.